Welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. Dive deep into humane leadership crafted for today's fast-paced business world. Listen to our podcast on all major streaming platforms and join us as we explore the essence of humane leadership in today's dynamic business landscape. I'm Roberto Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader, alongside Trace Olerty, a Fortune 100 IT leader. Today, we are discussing the do's and don'ts about job hunting, especially if you are above 40 years old. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. And I'm in that category. I'm over 40, not looking for a job, but over 40. It creeps up on you quick. You get over 40 pretty fast. I think you're over 42, aren't you?
Well, you are you're such a gentleman because I'm 54.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, age creeps up on you fast. So some of our younger listeners be like, I don't need to worry about that. But before you know it, you go from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60. It goes really quick. So it's good to prepare for any age, to prepare for when you need to look for a job, because it does get harder the older you get.
Yeah, indeed. And today, what we're going to discuss is if we met with, I don't know, with a friend at a coffee shop, and this person told us, hey, I was fired. I don't have a job. I'm about 40 years. So what should I do and what should I don't do? So in this case, I think the most important thing about job hunting is to realize that we don't have money coming on a daily basis or every 2 weeks arriving to us, that we have to spend as less as possible. And I don't mean this just especially as a humane leader. What I meant is as someone who realizes that money doesn't come often, that you have to be really, really aware of that and make the decisions that will take you to spend the less possible, but to maximize the one that you have already.
Yeah, you certainly need to take a look at your expenses very early on. As soon as you lose your role, is to look at it and say, what are the things that I could cut out of the budget that I don't really need right now while I'm, not receiving income or receiving less income. Maybe you have a spouse, maybe you don't, but clearly this search as you get older could be significantly longer. I can remember in my younger days, certainly finding roles was pretty darn easy. Also because the kind of roles I was looking for were more plentiful. As you get older and you kind of narrow your professional outlook, I think, and the kind of jobs that I would look for if I was looking for a job now are much more limited. There aren't as many of them. So it is definitely going to be harder and a longer search. So if I'm spending a lot of money, I am going to feel a lot of pressure to find a job very quickly, which is not a good situation to be in. So you definitely want to try and cut unnecessary expenses. It doesn't mean you need to cut everything. I mean, you can still have Netflix, right? That's not too expensive. But if you have some expensive subscriptions, I'd certainly look at reducing those, things like that.
Yeah. Maybe let's say that instead of going to the gym, if you have dumbbells in your house, you could do exercise with those dumbbells, watching YouTube videos, which are free.
Exactly.
And something that is also really important is to avoid maybe getting to a Starbucks. If you are a coffee lover, instead of going to Starbucks to buy a coffee, which is expensive by the way, you could do it in your kitchen. The thing about this is when you have money, you're in a fat cows situation. That is called in Mexico. I think it's also in the States. Uh, but when you don't have the money, you're in a slim cows situation. And besides that, understanding how much money do you have, what are your expenses, maybe medical expenses, what are the ones that you have to pay 100%, maybe rent, maybe something really, really important from the ones that you don't have to. Because in the end, this is temporary. If you manage this situation to become temporary, if you sit and think that the job offers will arrive as when you were 20 years old or in that age bracket, it isn't that way. Usually because the hiring managers watches people about 40 years old as, yes, they have a lot of experience, but yes, they will ask for too much money. So we have to understand and we have to have maybe certain techniques and ways to achieve, first of all, a job interview.
Right. Well, and it is a job. Finding a job is a job, at any age. And I think that, as an older person like myself, there are things or aspects to that are going to be different. One, it's way less jobs that I'm looking for. I'm not going to have as many opportunities for me personally because I'm an executive. So therefore, I'm looking for executive leadership roles. Well, then there aren't going to be as many of those, right? It's a pyramid in an organization. So, once you've handled your money issues and you've looked at all your biggest expenses to determine which of the big ones you can cut down, because obviously if you can, you know, spend less on the big things, cutting out a Starbucks is helpful, Starbucks coffee, but it's $7 a month, versus maybe you like to set your air conditioner really cold, and that's going to spend, that ends up costing you $8 a day. So sometimes you got to look at where is the big money going. But looking for a job is a job, and you should look at organizing it in a way. Are you focused in doing it, or are you wasting time? Like, oh, I look for a job for 15 minutes and then I play Xbox. Well, Roberto, you really need to approach this just like a job. So why don't you set up a schedule and, let's suppose you're married. And so your wife leaves for work at 8:00. Well, she better see you at your computer at 8:00, starting your job search. And you're going to search for jobs until it's lunchtime. And then, then you can take a break and play Xbox if you want. But then it's back to the job search because it's a job to find a job. So approach it just like you do a work. Have a schedule. You can take weekends off from job searching. I don't have a problem with that kind of thing when you're over 40, but realize that it is going to take you longer, at 40 or 45 to find a job than if you're 25. Your salary demands are greater, just like you said. The number of roles that you're willing to accept is decreased because you're older and probably have moved up in the organization to some degree. You're not a junior entry level engineer anymore. But realize then that finding it's going to be a lot harder. So approach it like a job. Be organized. Keep records of where you've applied to. Customize your resume, your CV for the role. Each company, don't send just a generic one. You need to approach this very professionally because people are going to look at you and say, okay, boy, you seem like, I'm going to guess, let's say you look like you're 65 and you're really 50. Well, the company's going to be wondering, well, how much longer is this person going to stay with us? So maybe you've got to do some appearance things. Maybe you had really long hair, gray hair, but if you cut it short like mine, a lot of the gray disappears. So when I let my hair grow out, I look 10 to 15 years older. when I cut it, people guess my age. They guess 10 years younger. Still gray all in here, but it just doesn't look the same anymore. So there are, appearance things, the ways you approach the job. I would encourage you, if you were looking for the job right now, I might shave the beard. I just, I know you love it, but I'd tell you, Roberto, in my opinion, no beard. Mustache, maybe, but no beard.
I don't know. I totally agree. My wife wouldn't. I totally agree with you.
Well, you
No,
got to
no,
balance
but
job
I
search
understand
with spouse
perfectly.
happiness. You need to balance job search with spouse happiness, without a doubt.
Yes, because this one will grow in a month or less. But yeah, I totally understand, and and you spot it. When people are when you're going to have an interview, they're going to watch at all these things that will say this person is really, really old, and maybe it isn't, you know? So I understand. Shave the beard, be presentable, and it's like working remotely. You won't be working at your pajamas. You have to work as you used to, maybe a shirt or maybe a t-shirt, but something presentable. Because if they see that you just woke up and you have your hair like, like a
Bedhead, we
mess
call
over
we bedhead
here.
we call that in the United States. Bedhead, because you slept on it. And
Oh, that one, bad head. It's not going to bring good stuff about the interview. And maybe you're the person for that position. But if you sabotage yourself, it won't be easy to overcome that. And also, one thing that is really, really important is to understand that today, all those old resumes that had 3 or more pages are a waste of time. You have to narrow down your resume to up to 2 pages. Because even you might be, you might have been in, I don't know, 20 companies in your work lifetime, and it's cool. It's a lot of experience, but try to narrow it down. Maybe say, okay, these are my 5 latest jobs, and from this year to this year, I work these kind of companies, these industries. I was, maybe in our case, I began as a junior engineer and went up to CTO levels, etc. Something that it won't be a burden for the one who's reading your resume, but most important, to put on your resume to today's standards. People doesn't want to spend a lot of time reading resumes. This is like a human resource person who has posted the job offer, the job description. Maybe he or she got 100 resumes. He doesn't want to spend more than 1 minute reading what. So you have to
yep.
be really, really aware that those kind of resumes are powerful, not the ones that we used to have many years ago.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the timing and age factors too. Is look at your resume, and if you had listed stuff like I got my Microsoft certification in 1990, that's giving away your age for sure, right? And plus that certification is not relevant. None of that technology, is being used anymore. So don't date yourself with things that show that you're really old. Instead, talk about your most recent accomplishment. What did you successfully implement in the last year or two? Maybe you did get a recent certification. You're still in a very technical role. Great, but don't share one that's older than 5 years old. You want to share showing that, yeah, I'm continuously learning. I'm learning new technologies. I just got my certification in chat GPT and prompt engineering. Those are things that are showing you are very energetic and learning new things constantly. telling me that you got your your Microsoft Windows 3.1 certification is a bad thing to have on your resume.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Because as you mentioned, maybe an achievement of an application that was back in the mid-90s doesn't work right now. You know, a desktop application. Right now it's a web or a mobile. So you have to be aware. And that's not only the only stuff. The thing is try to avoid this when you got into when you're mentioning about dates of the company that you've been. I will put this example. If you put on that you work from December 31st, 2024 up to January 1st, 2025, it seems that you work one day. But if you put on from December 2024 to January 2025, it seems that you work 1 month. What you have to do is to put on 2024 to 2025. It seems that you work at least 1 year. So those kind of pointers are really important for someone who's going to read your resume rapidly and understand, oh my God, this guy has been a lot of time. You know, he hasn't worked one day. That it would be. Yeah. So I think that is something really important. And don't try to have all these resumes that are with bright colors, really weird fonts. Try to stick to someone, a font which is easy to read, not the ones that aren't, because they say, no, no, these are new generations. I'm going to do something. No, try to be professional and try to do something. It's like buying a book. You won't read a book which has weird fonts. You have to read a book which has a normal font which is easier to read.
Yep, yep. And I mean, we all need to realize too that most companies now are screening their resumes with AI or at least keyword filters and things, right? So every application that you do or resume that you're doing for a company, you need to pay attention. What are some of the company's key phrases that they're into, right? Maybe they are very much into continuous learning and continuous education. Well, then your resume should highlight some of the things that you learned. Even if you didn't go to formal training, what are some of the things that you learned? And show in your resume, that you're a continuous learner. So again, let's say back to the Chat GPT and prompt engineering, that I'm learning how to better engineer prompts in Chat GPT to be more efficient in my code generation, in my presentation, let's say you're a salesperson, in my sales approach. I'm using Chat GPT to learn new sales techniques by better prompt engineering. Those are showing that you're continuously learning, which if the company's website talks about that as one of their key principles, then that should be on that resume, right? A different company might have, something very strong about the environment. Well, then in your resume, you could mention something that you've done recently that reduces your carbon footprint. Tailor what you're looking for to the company. And the more you can use some of the key phrases from that company, the more likely their resume screening system actually gets your resume to the human who can look at it with their eyes and then read it. Because I'm sure certainly in any large company, your resume is getting screened automatically before it gets to a human, right? Because at least what I'm reading here in the States, most open positions get thousands of CVs, resumes, thousands per job. So there's no way somebody went through 4,000 resumes and picked yours, right? It's a computer or something screening it down to maybe the 50 best. Even that, might be tough. So when you think about that, you're getting pretty filtered out right away just based on what your resume has on it.
Yeah, you spotted right. those kind of systems are called ATS, applicant tracking systems, and they will search for keywords. So forget about having just one resume. Maybe you would have like a foundation of resumes. This one is for head of engineering, this for engineer manager, this for CTO, this for VP of engineering. But from those, you have to modify the words as you mentioned to make it more appealable and searchable for these ATS.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, when your friend's looking for a job, you know, just like I was being frank about, look, I think you should get rid of the beard for a job search. That's just my opinion, but you need to be frank with your friends.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and honest. It's not that I don't mind beard. Sometimes I have one too. But when you're trying to project yourself as young, what are some of the things that make you look older? Right. And it might be glasses. Well, sometimes I wear contacts, but they kind of irritate my eyes. But well, then every time you go on an interview, wear your contacts, right? Don't go into the interview blind, no glasses.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
there are things like that again just make people look older. You know, I'm fortunate. I had LASIK surgery, so my eyesight is still really good. I actually just went to the eye doctor. I'm still 20/20. However, my close-up reading is going. Why? Because I'm old. Well, then if I'm going on my physical interview, I'm not going to pull out my cheaters. That's what we call just the reading glasses in the United States, cheater lenses, right? So I can read something. Instead, I'll do my best to prepare and read anything I need about the company ahead of time so that I don't need to put on glasses, let's say, to read fine print, you know, and give away my age. So, you know, I think when you read your friend's resume and you give them your honest opinion, you got to be really honest about it and say, look, this resume, I wouldn't hire you either. Be frank, right? I looked at it. There's all these things that make you look out of date. You didn't tell me about any recent training you've been on. You don't highlight your accomplishments. Hey, Roberto, I remember when you told me about that payment application that you wrote just 2 years ago. How come that's not on this resume? What's up with that? What are you thinking, man? You know, so sometimes you've got to be, I don't want to mean, it's not mean, but you're being very direct with them to tell them, look, there's things on here you just can't do. It is an opinion. So always be, you know, honest with your friend. Look, it's just my opinion, but I'm going to give you my honest opinion.
Yeah, totally. That's why we're meeting at a coffee shop and a friend is asking for our help. We won't be telling lies. We had to tell the truth because if we polish, as we say, the apple and not saying the harsh truth, they won't get maybe a job. And what we have to do as human leaders is to guide them towards the success of them finding a job, basically. And that's what we have to do. Let me tell you, there are a couple of things that happen. One to myself and one to my dad, not specifically to us, that we lost a job. A friend of mine lost his job like 8 years ago, and he began searching for job positions, and he couldn't get a single interview. So what he did was, in 1 month, he learned a new programming language, and he created different applications, and then he applies for different job positions of lesser position that he used to apply, and he got a job. He wasn't the VP of engineering, but he landed a mid-engineering job, and he found out that he earned more money than while he was in a management position. That's the first one. And a friend of mine dad, who was maybe like 70 years old, a few years ago, he lost his job. So he understood that he couldn't apply to those job positions because ageism was going to be a factor. So what he did was to train himself, I don't know, for a specific amount of time as a Six Sigma consultant. And then his age, his experience, his wisdom, and the knowledge of Six Sigma put on as a consultant, and big companies begin hiring this guy temporary as a project, as a contractor, but he got that. So we must understand that maybe what we require to do is to gain knowledge rapidly using our wisdom, our wits, and either apply or try to sell our services. That is something really important. With that in mind, you won't feel depleted of energy or guts to do stuff. You will feel compelled to achieve, to gain this achievement of this project of yourself, and it will be better, rather than say, no,
Yep.
no, 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 I don't want to do that. I want a job like this. No, it doesn't work like this. We have a competition way too fierce and way too brutal against people who could be our children, our sons, our daughters. So we must take control of this.
Without a doubt, you're spot on. He realized what his value was in his new situation, right? And every day is new for us because every day we get older. And so he realized, look, my age isn't the problem, it's the benefit. But how do you sell your age, right? And you sell it as wisdom, you sell it as things and experiences, you sell it as I've been there, done that, solved that problem. I can help you avoid problems because I've experienced them, right? I have 35, 40 years of experience versus the person who only has 10 years of experience. They just haven't seen as many things as you've seen. So do help your friend, think about what's the value that they're bringing. And your friend's, your dad's friend is, hey, I'm bringing wisdom to the table. I'm bringing experience and avoiding big, expensive problems. And that's how you're selling yourself. So you do have, you want to sit down with your friend and really have some very tough decisions or tough discussions rather on what is it that that a company would really value in you. What is that? And if you can find that special thing, that special wisdom that you bring to the table, maybe it's years of working in a refinery, and so you have a different perspective on safety than other programmers. Maybe you worked in the food industry, and so you have a certain perspective and experience about working in clean environments. Those are key things that you want to highlight on your resume that makes you special, and how your experiences or your wisdom will help the company. And that's really, I think, what your dad's friend recognized, right? Is that what's his real value that he's bringing to the company. And that's the kind of thing where when you're brainstorming with your friend, you got to be honest about what was the value that you brought to your last job.
Yeah, indeed. Totally agree. And before we end this podcast, I will tell you something about this episode and this podcast. This episode, it was meant or aimed for people about 40 years old, but it could be for anyone. It could be for less than 40 years old. If you're beginning, if you haven't found a job, if you were fired or something like that, it's really important to take this and us maybe as your friends, the one who are listening to this, for you to take control of this situation and do all this stuff. And from this podcast is also meant to brag about your 2020 vision, man. Good for you.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, We'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Very good. Very good. And for those of you listening, Roberto's getting married. So congratulations and best wishes to you and your fiance. I hope everything goes smoothly. Even if it doesn't matter. You're going to be very happy together. I'm looking forward to hearing about the big party.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the wishes, and we'll spend not only a great party, but a great life together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.